Smile, Leech. That's the first thing my mother said to me on the night of my graduation party. I'm Arlena Kelm, 24 years old, the youngest daughter in a family that's turned humiliation into an art form. By the time I stepped into the Skyline Terrace ballroom, the air reeked of champagne, cologne, and flowers ordered weeks in advance. White tablecloths shimmered under golden light, but none of it warmed me. Across the room, my parents, Grady and Noella, played the part of perfect hosts. Until the MC's voice rang out, "Let's welcome the Kelm family," and their remarkable daughter, Cyrene. Thunderous applause. My father clapped like she'd won gold. My mother's smile could have lit the skyline. Then, and here's their youngest daughter, fresh from completing her degree. No name, no standing ovation, just polite, fading claps. As if standing for me would cost too much effort, I kept my chin high. In the happy family photo moments later, Noella leaned in close, her perfume wrapping tight around me. "Smile, Leech," she whispered again, lips barely moving. They wanted me to crack, to make a scene. Not tonight, not on their terms. Because if this was how they opened the night, I could only imagine how they planned to end it. It wasn't the first time they'd set the tone like that. Growing up, my parents mastered the art of making me feel like a guest in my own family. When I was 14, my science project won first place at state level. The local paper ran a story. Only the photo they used was of Cyrene mentoring me, as if I'd just been her assistant. When I protested, my father said, "No one likes a sore winner, Arlena. Learn to share the spotlight." It never occurred to him that I'd earned that light in the first place. At 16, I trained for months to run the half marathon. Cyrene signed up last minute and dropped out halfway through. But in every retelling at family dinners, my mother made sure to praise her courage for even trying, never mentioning that I'd finished in the top 10. And the seating games? Those started years ago. Weddings, reunions, banquets. I was always at the farthest table, behind the column, near the kitchen doors. "Better view of the buffet," my father would joke. But the message was clear. Out of sight, out of mind. Tonight felt like all those little cuts had been sharpened into one blade. First, being introduced without my name. Then tucked at a table so close to the kitchen that the swing of the doors kept brushing my chair. From there, I had a perfect view of the real head table. My parents in the center, Cyrene to their right, laughing with a local magazine editor. That's when I saw it. The open issue of his publication. My environmental engineering project, months of fieldwork, data collection, design, laid out across 2 glossy pages. Only the name under the headline wasn't mine. It was Cyrene's. A slow heat curled in my chest. Before I could speak, one of my father's friends clapped me on the shoulder. "Your sister's work is impressive. Didn't know she was into environmental science." I smiled tightly. She's very good at presentation. And presentation, I was starting to realize, was the only thing my family valued, especially when it came to erasing me. I'd learned the hard way. When my family tried to humiliate me, reacting too soon only fed their narrative. So I went quiet, watched, listened, and started cataloging every move. The first micro-shift came at the dessert table. My mother, mid-laugh with her friends, turned just enough for her voice to carry. "Remember when Arlena almost got expelled? Skipped weeks of mandatory seminars." A ripple of polite laughter spread. I set my fork down. "Actually," I said evenly, "I was on an academic exchange in Europe, sponsored by my department chair." My tone was mild, almost casual. But I saw the tiny twitch at the corner of her smile before she turned away. Not long after, Hollis appeared beside me, camera straps slung across their shoulder. "You've heard about the invitations, right?" they murmured. I frowned. "What about them?" "They printed your start time 30 minutes later. Just yours. People thought they were early. By the time they showed up, the first photos were done. Made it look like you were late." I didn't even need to answer. Of course they had. A late arrival, no name in the introduction, stolen credit. Tonight wasn't random. It was a sequence. Then Aunt Renata slipped me a sealed envelope as she passed. No words, just a steady look that said later. Inside, under the cool night air of the balcony, I found photocopies of my scholarship awards, grant letters, receipts with my name and student ID. Her note read, "For when they push too far." I tucked the papers deep into my clutch. They thought I had nothing but my stubbornness. They didn't know I had proof. Back inside, I kept my expressions smooth while the evening's rhythm shifted. My parents started glancing at me more often, short, loaded looks passing between them. Cyrene's laughter was too loud, her posture a touch too stiff. The band switched to something light. Guests lingered over wine and mousse. And that's when Hollis caught my gaze from across the room, tilting their head toward the side corridor. It wasn't casual. I followed, heels silent on the carpet, until we stopped beside a half-closed service door. Through the gap, my father's voice, calm, deliberate. Just make sure she drinks it. No scene, no trouble. My mother's reply. She'll just seem faint from the champagne. Then the event coordinator, Vela. I'll cue the toast. Hollis's phone was already recording. I memorized every word. And in that moment, I knew the night wasn't just about humiliation anymore. It was about survival. I stepped back from that half-closed door like it might burn me. The hallway was dim, but my pulse lit every nerve in my body. They weren't just trying to humiliate me tonight. They wanted me gone. Literally. Hollis lowered their phone, the recording already saved. You have them, I whispered. Clear as day, they said. But if you move too soon, they'll spin it. Back in the ballroom, everything gleamed like nothing was wrong. The servers moved in precise rhythm, setting champagne flutes at each place. My parents weren't mingling anymore. They were watching me. I kept my smile fixed, my clutch tight under my arm, and waited. When the server placed a glass to my right, Grady appeared at my elbow. Making sure you're all set, he said with that politician's grin. Then, while pretending to straighten my fork, I saw it. A small flick of his fingers. Something dropping into my drink. The faintest fizz. Then gone. I didn't flinch, didn't blink. Instead, I rose slowly, glass in hand, and crossed to Cyrene's table. She was mid-laugh, basking in the glow of her audience. Oh, I think you got my glass, I said lightly. Yours is probably warmer. She smirked. You're picky tonight. You know me, I answered with a smile that didn't touch my eyes. She swapped glasses without hesitation. The people around us chuckled. Harmless sibling banter, they thought. I returned to my seat, raising the now safe glass just as Vela's voice floated over the mic. Let's raise a toast to the graduate. Across the room, Cyrene sipped generously. Grady's jaw tightened. Noella's smile froze just a fraction too long. It only took minutes. Cyrene's laugh faltered, her hand braced on the table. A fork clattered to the marble as she tried to stand, knees giving way. Gasps rippled through the room. My parents were at her side instantly, perfect portraits of concern. But I saw it, that flash of panic in their eyes. Hollis was beside me now, phone angled just enough for me to see the video. Grady's hand, the drop, the fizz, the swap. Every second, time-stamped and undeniable. I could have ended it right there. But justice rushed is justice at risk. Let them think they still had the upper hand. The higher they climbed, the harder the fall. And when they fell, I was going to make sure everyone watched. The ballroom had gone from glittering celebration to controlled chaos. Paramedics pushed through the crowd toward Cyrene, their bags swinging at their sides. My parents clung to their performance. Grady murmuring reassurances, Noella pressing a napkin to her daughter's lips. But their eyes kept darting toward me. Perfect. I rose from my seat, heels soundless on the carpet, and headed for the AV booth tucked in the corner. The technician looked startled when I slipped a USB drive into his hand. Play this, I said quietly. My gaze didn't waver until he nodded. The screen above the stage flickered, the slideshow of curated family memories vanishing mid-frame. Then came the video, Grady leaning over my place setting. The flick of his fingers, the grainy outline of a packet dropping into the champagne, the fizz, the swap. Cyrene drinking. Gasps cut through the room like glass shattering. Phones appeared in hands. Someone near the front muttered, "That's attempted poisoning." From the edge of the crowd, Aunt Renata's voice rang clear. I have additional documents proving Arlena paid her own way through college, and that these two have been lying for years. She held the envelope aloft, pages crisp under the lights. Scholarships, grant letters, bank records, truth laid bare. The social current shifted instantly. Guests who'd been politely neutral all night stepped back from my parents. Whispers surged, eyes narrowed. The police, already on site for security, began moving with purpose. I stepped forward, voice steady, carrying over the hush. My whole life I've been told to stay quiet. Tonight you saw why. Silence is how they win. I let it hang. And I'm done being silent. Two uniformed officers approached my parents. Grady's jaw was stone. Noella's composure cracked, her smile sharpening into something almost feral. I set a small bundle on the head table. The family crest pendant, the keys to the house, and an envelope with my signed withdrawal from every shared asset. These belong to you, I said. I'm taking back my name, my time, and my life. Somewhere in the crowd, a single voice murmured, "Good for her." Renata smiled faintly, like she'd been waiting years for this. But the real freedom wasn't walking away from them. It was what I walked toward next. The glass doors of the Skyline Terrace closed behind me with a hush that felt like a chapter's ceiling shut. Outside, the night air was sharp and clean, Puget Sound glimmering under the city lights. I almost didn't recognize the woman staring back at me in the reflection. Shoulders squared, head high. But I liked her better than the one who'd walked in a few hours earlier. By sunrise, the video had already traveled farther than I could have imagined. Local news anchors repeated my name with the same gravity they once reserved for my parents. The legal machine spun fast. Charges of attempted poisoning and conspiracy filed before the week was out. Cyrene recovered physically, but her innocent victim story didn't survive long in a city where too many had seen her bask in years of stolen credit. Business partners dropped my parents. Charity sponsors vanished. The invitations that once flooded their calendar dried up overnight. The very people they'd courted under chandeliers now crossed the street to avoid them. I moved into a small apartment near the university district. Not big, not flashy, but mine. Paid for with my work, my name, my terms. I started consulting for an environmental engineering firm, building projects that didn't need a family crest to matter. A month later, at a final settlement meeting, I slid a signed document across the table. A full relinquishment of any claim to the family estate, paired with a legal ban on using my name or achievements for their social gain. "This is the last time you'll ever profit from my existence," I told them. Noella opened her mouth to argue, but I was already on my feet. That evening, I boarded the ferry, leaning on the rail as the skyline blurred into the horizon. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the sound of a door closing for the last time. And once you've learned to walk away, you start to see just how far you can go. Have you ever had to walk away from family to save yourself? You're not alone. Share your story below. Let's talk about it. Wherever you're watching from, morning coffee or late night quiet, I'd like to hear your story in the comments. And if this one stayed with you, subscribe to join a community that believes strength isn't silence. It's knowing when to speak.